Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for granting me the opportunity today to speak to you all. There are many in this audience who, like me, love our great nation, but are concerned about the direction in which we are being taken, who are anxious about the speed at which our nation's hard-won freedoms, developed and honed over generations and defended at great cost, are being swept aside by Europe. And they are rightly angered that those who sit in Parliament fail to sufficiently defend our national interest and watch as the European project grows stronger, assuming more powers at the expense of the British people. When I was asked to speak today on the effect European legislation has on our financial services industry, I was concerned. Concerned that in the midst of one of our country's greatest economic crises, that I, a lawyer working in London's city hedge fund, extolling the benefits of our banks and fund managers, would be a somewhat Herculean task. So I did what any sensible man would do, and I consulted with my mother, family and friends. However, my mother didn't greatly help, because she reminded me of her favourite corporate lawyer joke, namely, what do you say if you see a bunch of lawyers up to their necks in sand? More sand, please. Though even here in beautiful Torquay, I'm not sure there is enough sand to cover all those in the European Commission who are churning out our unwanted directives. But the more I discussed this, the more I realised how interconnected our financial services industry is in our daily lives, and how it sits often unseen in the background, providing a support for the industries and jobs that we rely upon, and acting as a force for improving our national wealth. And I recognise that it's clear that the banking industry currently has a terrible image, and there are those who, within it, have levels of excess that repel any decent person. But I'm conscious of how finance properly used can benefit us all, whether directly or indirectly. When my cousin James and his wife gave birth to their beautiful firstborn, they soon became aware of his tragic illness. He had a rare form of palsy. He faced this grim news with stoicism and the support of the family. But they were also superbly assisted by the nurses and doctors at their local Stockport hospital. They will continue to need the support of the National Health Service and those health service professionals throughout the course of that boy's life. In this country, we are able to take such standards of care for granted, but such standards come at a cost. And in the background, the financial services industry work with governments and health trusts to ensure that the millions of pounds needed to build, update and maintain our nation's hospitals are there. They provide the finance for the hundreds of businesses that support and work with the National Health Service, and are a major provider of tax revenues used to pay our nurses and doctors. And there are those here who are at university with children who want to go to university, but all know the costs and the burdens this places on yourselves. And the financial pressures on students will continue as governments pull more and more funding from the system. As governments withdraw, it will be left to the financial services industry to step in and fill the gap. And I know this only too well, because I came from a family that was unable to afford the high costs of fees to live in London and study as a barrister. The sums were not substantial, but I, like many of my peers, had to go to a bank and obtain a bank loan. This sadly will be the norm in the future, and we have to work with the financial services industry to ensure our students can progress to solid educations when these grants are being removed. And as we grow older and prepare for retirement, I'm reminded of Pat, my 82-year-old neighbour. She, like many pensioners, can no longer rely upon the state pension to sustain her daily needs. She has to supplement this meagre sum with her own pension provisions, exist on savings and dividends from the listed companies in the small number of shares that she has. Life is hard for her, and for the millions like her. So with the population growing older and living longer, Britain more than ever needs the skills for those in retirement planning and fund management to help provide the pensions our retirees need. I'm conscious this sounds like an advert for banks, which I do not intend it to be, but one of the reasons I entered the industry was really to seek the potential that it could work with banks, businesses and create jobs. This is the first time that many have seen a recession, The first time they have seen their friends lose their jobs, along with so many others. The first time they have seen small and famous businesses alike closing down with the devastation this brings. The first time they have seen houses left unsold, and worse still, people losing their homes. It leaves us all cold with insecurity and fear. But there are those like me who remember the devastation brought on by the recession in the 1980s. Swathes of our industrial titans and industries were laid low. Again, millions lost their jobs and thousands of homes. Whole communities were destroyed by the effects of a shifting world economy. Different causes, but the same effect. However, throughout that terrible period, the spirit of the British people remained. Our redoubtable creativity, enterprise, skill, and forward thinking were challenged to the full, and from the ashes of that recession, new industries rose up and older industries revived. None more so than our financial services industry. The Big Bang occurred because we wanted to free up the financial services because it was in our national interest. Look at that today and compare that to Europe, where all our major decisions have to be run through Commissaire Barnier. Sorry, I apologise, Commissioner Barnier. The industry working free within the government's framework became free and more entrepreneurial. Investments were made to a whole new breed of businessmen and women in industries such as oil, mining, technology, health, biocare, many of which were now world leaders. Financial services may not be the star of the Dragon's Den, but they were certainly a key part of UK PLC's success. And whilst it's true, ladies and gentlemen, that most people's image of the industry is watching Robert Peston reporting from swanky dealing rooms in the City of London and Canary Wharf, it isn't true of the industry as a whole. The rebirth of the financial industries played a part in the wider economy, creating jobs. Edinburgh has always had a strong fund management and banking industry, and despite the debacle of HBOS and RBS, it still has world-class companies and professionals. Leeds and Manchester have long established insurance and banking businesses such as the Cooperative Bank, but they also are home to investment brokers, corporate finance firms and property lending businesses. Building societies are still a major employer in Cheltenham, Gloucester, Bristol, Birmingham. Other towns and cities such as Chester, Stockport, Milton Keynes and Bath have developed areas of expertise in leasing and credit cards. There are few towns and cities in the UK which do not have some link to the industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the examples of the success that we as the British people, when pulling together, can achieve. The financial service industry now provides 1.1 million direct jobs. Many thousands more indirect jobs are in law, accounting, recruitment, building, cleaning services. In the financial year 2009, the financial service industry contributed £61.4 billion in taxation to the UK economy. That's 12.1% of all government receipts. How many schools, hospitals, fire and police stations are able to be paid for because of that? That is why the City of London is recognised as a key financial centre. It is number one in many markets where we did not have successful industries before, we do now. Sectors like the private equity